Good morning and welcome to PWGC's Environmental Echo. I am Paul Boyce, the host and president and CEO of PW Grocer Consulting. And today we've got a great topic and great guest. We've got Mayor Paul Pontieri from Patchogue, and we're going to be talking about Patchogue's forward progress in the recent, I could say decades or years here. But it's going to be quite interesting and stimulating for our listeners and viewers today, so I hope you guys enjoy this. Before we start, if you guys need to reach out to us, you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding today's podcast or any of our previous ones, you can always reach us at our website, which is www.pwgrocer.com/podcast, and we are the Environmental Echo. So today's guest, Paul Pontieri, he's currently the mayor of Patchogue, who's been there for nearly, 2 decades now?
Yeah, we're going on 18 years.
And he's overseen the revitalization of Patchogue's downtown from it being just about all but deserted to one of Long Island's top destinations. And I can attest to this because I live pretty close to the village. I'm in Bayport, right on the border of Islip and Brookhaven, which is right there, so I do get to visit frequently, and I really do enjoy the village and what it's become. He's a lifelong resident of the village. He's worn many hats over the course of his career, and he's been an assistant principal at Bellport High School, principal at Bosse's. He's been a deputy town supervisor for economic development at Brookhaven. He's served on the board of Suffolk County Community College, and we could talk all day about the list that goes on and on. His experience, coupled with his lifelong association with the village, he gives him a unique perspective regarding the village's rebirth. He's witnessed the region's ebb and flow, and he's worked since 2004 to improve the village's economy and environment. So before we get into that, I also want to introduce our second guest and sort of my right-hand man on these podcasts as of late. It's Charlie Bartha. He's a senior vice president at PW Grocer, and he's heading up a lot of our business development efforts lately. He's been with the firm for,
4 years now.
4 years now. Time is flying by. But I do want to welcome Mayor Pontieri and thank him for joining us today. Mayor, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're going to dive right into our topics, and we've just touched on this briefly. The Village of Patchogue has become a premier example for how to reinvent downtown Long Island. I mean, we said it in the intro here. It's been revitalized. It's the shops, the restaurants, the music, the Live at 5, the events that you guys put on, and the way what it's become from where it's been. It's just astounding. So when you became mayor, what were the issues that were really facing your administration, and what was your vision for the village?
When I took office, we were probably vacant by 50% in square footage, 22% in storefronts. So the thing I clearly understood, and having been a lifelong resident, the thing that you do understand is downtown is about people being downtown, is that businesses come where people are. A business doesn't come because you say to Starbucks, come to Patchogue, you'll help us prosper. Starbucks shows up, and they're just recently showing up when you have prospered. So my whole goal is how do we put people back on Main Street? And the way you do it is by building a community around Main Street. When you think about Patchogue is this little urban center in the middle of a big suburban sprawl. And we needed to rebuild that urban center with people. And that's where Copper Beach came in, Art Space, because Art Space gave us the opportunity to brand ourselves as arts and entertainment. So we kept looking at different ways of doing that, and then Tritech shows up. And they build a $100 million project. So it really, my sense is that we needed people. You put feet on the street and and businesses show up. And we're in barbecues, which is across the street from the Brick House. And Brick House has been there since '96. They withstood all of the downturns. Eric Rifkin from Barbecue, driving down past Village Hall. I'm walking down the steps, and he stops and goes, do you know anybody around here that can help me figure out if there's something worth building in Patchogue? And we started talking. He wanted to put a barbecue place in. And we found a place, and that was right in the middle of when Copper Beach was being built. So there was an investment, and he invested because somebody else invested. So that's really the original sense. And we were an older community at the time, probably someone's between 42 and 45 years old as an average. Today, 18 years later, our average is 36 years old. Young families all over the place. You know, when I first came into office at Halloween, 2 bags of M&Ms and I hit every kid on the block. I'm sitting out on my front steps with my Groucho Marx glasses on, and 150 kids come by.
Oh, wow.
So just a big change, big change.
That is phenomenal, and like I said, I can attest to that fact. I've been in where I live for the last almost over 20 years now, and,
Right.
and I've watched that revitalization happen, unfold. And you mentioned Tritech, which is a developer that we're very familiar with, and they are a top-notch outfit.
Absolutely.
And you know, I don't want to say the village was blessed to have them, but I mean, it was really a win-win for both of you guys.
Under your stewardship, you've found the right balance between growth of the economy, population, and also the environment. People are very often concerned about that, and that's where the naysayers hop on early on. But you have been blessed by having a sewage treatment
Yes.
plant, and you've expanded it. And why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, the sewer plant is interesting, and I have a photo in my office. It's probably 4 foot by 5 foot, you know, just, and it's a downtown Patchogue in 1907, and that's when the sewer lines were first put in, and then it was probably flush, gravity, flow into the bay, and hopefully, you know, we'll screen out the big stuff, but everything else ends up where it ends up.
Yep.
So in a lot of ways, Patchogue has been ahead of the curve on a lot of that stuff. You know, 25 is when the first real plan came in. 52, they rebuilt it. 85, they rebuilt it. Then we rebuilt it. And I've always wanted, I never asked Norman Lectrecker, who was the mayor that actually appointed me as a trustee in 86, why he went to 500,000 gallons on this plant, when at the time all you really needed was 200,000. They were under a consent order. They were doing about 140,000. The consent order said they had to go to 250. He went to 500,000. Made all the difference in the world because it allowed us to build Copper Beach, art space. And now it's going to allow us to put in between 250 and 500 homes in South Patchogue to connect them, because we hear about the brown tide, we hear
Yep.
about nitrogen in the water, we hear about all of those things. We have the opportunity to take care of our little place in space, you know, and it's because of mayors before me who were smart enough to understand that for business to grow and for downtown to grow, you needed sewers. What we understand is for our community, and one of the things we're in the middle of right now is we're trying to get the funding together to expand the plant by another 400,000 gallons to bring it to 1.2 million. We don't need that in the village. We could use, I would probably put 150 to 200,000 aside for us. But part of my pitch to Schumer and Zeldin and those making these decisions is we will take that other 200,000 and let it go where it wants to go, south and east, maybe to your
Oh,
neighborhood.
boy.
You know,
Yeah.
if they can't get a hookup into Sable, run the line to Sable. I don't care. You know, if it's economically good for the village, just in terms of pure dollars and key money and those other kind of funding things. But more importantly, it takes a sited plant and expands its use into those communities that need it.
Oh, wow. I mean, I didn't realize it was, you know, a look to expand that much into the future.
You know, I've always said that I just want to be able to walk out the back door of Village Hall, back to look over my shoulder and say the community is a better place because I walked in the front door. As silly as that sounds, but part of that is making sure it's prepared for the future. You know, with the board is starting to transition now into a younger group of people. Patrick McAfee, we just brought onto the board. He's 35 years old. We have a young lady, Hispanic young lady. She hasn't been appointed yet, so I won't mention the name. That we're going to bring on younger families and younger, you know, and a more diverse board. We have to think about the community we're in and the community we want to be.
No, I agree. And every time I visit Patchogue, I can see how diverse the community is. And it's a great mix of people there. You know, young, old, and all different walks of life. I mean, it's amazing, and how they all interact and how they get along too. It's just, again, it's an example for the rest of Long Island. It really is.
Well, back in 2008, and you'll remember it, I know Charlie does.
Yep.
We had the murder of Marcelo Lucero.
Yep.
Tragic. The death of one controlled the direction of the community. I always used to wonder when it started, you'd walk down the street and I would say to myself, oh, we don't have that many. Did the Latino Hispanic community not want to be seen, or did we not want to see them? Was I ignoring the fact that we're here? Or were they making sure they weren't seen by others because out of fear of being accepted? And I think that whole sense helped us move to a better place. Like I said, the young lady that we're going to be bringing onto the board, going to be proposed to come onto the board, she came to me in 2014, 15 with a problem, very angry at me. I mean, she came in, nails out, ready to do war. And we sat and we figured it out, what the problem was. And then I put her on a community development agency. She's been on the zoning board. But she's only 34 years old. But she's that next generation that's got to begin to carry the village forward.
Help lead, certainly.
But just an aside to her, it's during the pandemic, she got almost 750 Hispanic and Latino people vaccinated herself. That she signed them in and she sort them out. So that's the kind of talent you want, ones that are so community focused.
Couldn't agree with you more. Well said, Mayor. Yes. But back to the environmental issues that the village faced, during the revitalization. I know there was might have been some hurdles related to some demolition of some old, long-term, long-standing places like the former lace mill, parking garage, and certainly one that we all know, Sweezy's.
Yep.
How was that perceived? How did you work around that, or how did you work through that?
I don't think. Well, a couple of things. I wasn't here for when the mill came down and that building went up. But if you take a look at it, it's brick. It's got all the elements of the old. When Tritech came in, a short story, and Charlie knows the gentleman I'm going to speak of, David Sloan, land use attorney.
David, yeah.
Miss him every day.
Yeah.
God rest his soul.
I should say I knew David. Yes, great guy.
Just a great guy.
Character.
So he brings Tritech in, they're sitting at the table, and we're looking at a piece of property down on River Avenue, the Hess property, where we did the dredging. But there's some environmental issues down there. And they came in, and we went through the thing, and Bob Coughlin said, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. And so we're walking out, and Sloan goes to me, Paulie, come on, they got $30 million in their pocket. You can't let them go. So we didn't let them go. So Dave and myself, Paulie, let's get Bobby and Jimmy in a car. Let's take a ride. So we take a ride around town, and we take a look at the Sweezy building that you talk of. And that corner, that's where it started, that they were going to buy that corner and just do something on that corner. But then they realized if I buy that corner and we do something, then you got to do something with this building. And then you got to do this. And then you got to do that. You got to move the Carnegie Library. They picked it up 800,000 pounds and moved it down the block and around a corner. And it sits in a place where it looks like it's been there forever. And it was totally rebuilt to what it was when I was 5 years old and I got my first library card. So it was that kind of energy, those kind of people, the David Sloans, who grew up in Patchogue, and he's known me since I'm 10 years old. So we've known each other for a long time, a lot of trust. But it's in getting through that. Now, in that picture that I have, and it's looking up South Ocean Avenue at the Sweezy's building in 1907. And that's in my office. In my conference room right next door, there's another picture of a rendering of what is built now, the Tritech, from exactly the same place. Whenever anybody comes in and talks about the size of that building, I bring them in here and I go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Sweezy's building in 1907 was 5 stories. And then the tower and something else burned off of it. But it was, and the windows, and because I would give, no matter who it is, I have a stack of books done by the village historian of pictures of the village over the years. And I would say to them, before you think you know who we are, and I give them the book, and I said that to the Coughlin's, before you think you know who we are, take a look at this. This is who we are. So I think people look at the building now. When you look at it from that angle, it's brick, it's different, but the roof, they've separated out that section. There's enough of a sense of history in the building that people don't.
Well, I think that's important. And Patchogue is a place that has a lot of residents that have been there their whole life, such as yourself. And you have respect for the history, which includes respecting the environment, which I think Paul's going to talk about the river in a little bit. But also, if talk about your office and photos, there's a photo of your father working on Route 112 construction, your grandfather.
Wow.
And
you wouldn't recognize Route 112, but it's a great photo.
Oh, yeah, it is, because my grandfather had a construction business, and he poured the first concrete on 112, probably 1917, 1918. You know, the actual road itself, there was a road there prior to that, but the actual construction, you dig down through the blacktop, you're going to find his concrete. You know, the Sweezy Street Bridge, the Road Boulevard Bridge, the one by Flo's on Middle Road. So there's a lot of history in the concrete. In fact, I have a picture. I have those pictures. I have a series of pictures of him in different places. But I get a call from the Emmanuel Lutheran Church that in front of their parsonage, they were taking out the sidewalk, and there was a brass plaque in the sidewalk. There's a Latito and Romeo fine concrete. My mother was a Romeo, and the Latito was like another relative. Do I want the plaque? I said, absolutely. I figured they were going to chip it out, but they saw cut it. So you could put your hands on it, you know, and feel the history in it. So I had it in the office for a while, and then I said to myself, you know, I'm going to take this thing home when I leave, or it's going to stay here. But it's going to lose its meaning, and it's going to end up in a dumpster someplace. Maybe 2 generations from now, my son might appreciate it, maybe his kid did. But somebody's just going to say, well, who is this? What is it? So I gave it to the Historical Society.
Oh, wow.
And because it'll stay there, and they have it, the suit's there, and I got a picture with Uncle Richard, my mother's brother, the last of the Romeos, and Tilly Latito. She's 106. Uncle Richard was 90 when this picture was taken. But it was a Latito and a Romeo with the plaque, you know, so it's just neat stuff.
Oh, man, some real history there.
Yeah.
Goes way back. I had no idea. It's very interesting. We did talk a little bit, actually quite a bit, about some of the sewering that's going on in Patchogue. And, the other areas of Suffolk County are also in different various phases and stages of either design or going to construction. Where does the village stand right now? With you talked about maybe 250 to 500 residences, you know, to be tied into the current sewage treatment plant. Where are you guys with that project?
We just got approval, and out of this election, the good and the bad happens. Rob Calarco, he was a presiding officer and lost in this election, managed to get us and get the state to release $22 million to us. And that's, we have a series of sewer lines that were put in by different projects. You know, Bay Village, ran a sewer line down, but they ran it down Cedar Avenue, Laurel Street, Gilbert Street. Any place that we have a sewer line, we're going to be able to hook the homes in. And there are about 250 of them along these lines. And those lines go down as far as the Sandspit, you know, where the Davis Park Ferry is.
Yep.
So, and Ocean Avenue. So we're going to be able to do that with that $22 million. We're in the process now of doing the final engineering. So everything's ready. We just need, they need to put together the bid package, and I think hopefully we can get ourselves started by late spring, early summer.
Next year?
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Are these going to be gravity sewers? Are they going to be force mains, low-pressure sewers?
Low pressure
pressure?
with the pumps.
So each house is going to have its own separate little pump.
We had done that down at the end of River Avenue. There were 50 homes down there, and we had gotten to the county about $750,000 towards that, and then we picked up another grant of $500,000. That was about $1.2 million, but we did 52 homes, and not only that, but did permeable pavers, you know, in the streets because of the flooding.
Sure.
We just tore up the whole thing. It was a great project, but we did 52 homes. And the problem is, just a background to why this whole thing has taken as long as it's taken, is that we did that at about $12,000 a home to do the hookup, the pump, and everything. The bids came back, in some cases, as much as $90,000 a home, and that just
Whoa.
put the skids on
8
everything.
times the cost,
Oh,
roughly.
it was
7, 8
crazy.
times.
But now, but if they give us the money,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do, if I can do 275 homes, we'll do 270. Leave the money to the village to handle. We'll make sure it gets handled properly. If you leave it, and it's nothing against the county or the state. It's just there's too many regulations. They regulate the hell out of you.
And what about the residents, the homeowners? Are they all, rah, let's get this done? Or is it,
Yeah. In fact, what you're getting now is you're getting the guy that's calling saying, I need to replace my cesspool. What's happening?
Yep.
I want to replace my driveway. Are you coming up my driveway? So that kind of stuff.
Right.
But we're pretty close to making this happen.
If you guys get started next year, that'd be
Yeah.
terrific.
I mean, Peter Scully and the county have just been wonderful with this.
There's been a big effort at the county level
Yeah.
to push sewers, not just in Patchogue forward, but
Yeah.
more or less countywide where they can. So
Right.
it's been as an environmental engineer, it's what I like to see.
Yeah.
That's what we're about, a sustainable, resilient future, which leads me to the next topic, which I'm going off my menu a little bit. Climate change, resiliency. The Village of Patchogue is right on the Great South Bay.
Yeah.
What kind of issues do you guys have to contend with in terms of potential rising sea levels? We talk about 100-year, 200-year, 500-year storms coming in, hurricanes, severity and frequency increasing. What's the village doing to work on for resilience?
6 years ago, we got I got called by a fairly wealthy donor in the village to meet with her. And she says to me, Paul, are there things that need to get done in the village? So I said, so we talked and this and the other thing. And I walked out thinking, I mentioned that the only thing that really is taxpayer driven, parks and recreation. I said, so I'm having lunch the next day and the phone rings and she calls me. She says, Paul, I think you, because I'm thinking if I can walk out of here with $500,000, I'm in pig heaven here,
Sure.
And she says to me, Paul, I'm talking about $5 million. So it's a private $5 million donation to upgrade our parks. So the thing we immediately do is we break out 2.5 of it and put that to the side and put 2.5 into current work and go for a state grant. And we get another 2.5. So now we're up to $5 million. And what we're looking to do is a living shoreline. You deal with the DEC, you deal with the Army Corps of Engineers, you deal with every agency that couldn't make a decision if their life depended upon it. 5 years later, we're still waiting for the final permit.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's not uncommon. I've heard that concern
Yeah.
expressed by other guests on our podcast, as well as clients and people in the community.
In our senses with the living shoreline, when it comes to the climate change and the rising tides, is that the water can come up and drain out. Right now, it comes up and it sits. You got 4 feet of water sitting there, it'll sit there. We're bulkheaded. We're very fortunate through all the big storms. We have parks on the bay, so they absorb that initial thrust. So yeah, we get water into neighborhoods, but if we can build this living shoreline in parks, we have the Shorefront Park, which is 36 acres, and a fairly big. But that's how we're beginning to deal with it now. We're handling things all through the state code, building codes now about raising houses, and it's one of the projects on the river ran into the problem of, because it's a marina on the river. He's got to go up 7 feet. So now you add 7 feet to 45 feet, which is our limit. Now you have to 52 feet, and now you got the whole neighborhood shooting arrows
Up in
at
arms,
you.
yep.
Yeah, so I mean, it creates another set of problems. And the other set of problems I look at, and I don't know where the future takes it, is it's really great that you raise all these homes. But you hit my age, how many stairs do I want to climb to get into my house?
Yep.
Put an elevator downstairs. So it's something that's never talked about, but I kind of look at it. All these homes in South Patchogue that are being raised 7 feet, could be an issue over time.
That does kind of limit when it comes time to sell them.
Yeah.
As to the opportunity, yeah.
But then again, you guarantee yourself young families, I guess.
Yep, it's certainly another way to turn over the neighborhood and revitalize in that respect too. Mayor, you touched on one thing briefly while we were talking on this topic, and that's the Patchogue River.
Right.
It is sort of I want to say a unique feature to Patchogue. There are other villages and towns that have rivers, but for you guys, it really is a prominent feature within the village. I mean, I've visited, there's restaurants and there's marinas, and even your sewage treatment plant is not too far from, it's right on the Patchogue River.
That's where everything goes.
I know. So, what was the riverfront like when you were first elected mayor?
Well, it's the riverfront. There were some restaurants that were starting to come in place, some buildings starting, but more importantly, the river hadn't been dredged since 1969, I think it was, Charlie.
Yeah.
And so we started to figure out how do we cobble enough money together. It's a federal waterway. They didn't care. They weren't going to dredge it. The county said it's a federal waterway. We're not going to dredge it. And so and the town said, well, it's in Patchogue. Why would we dredge it? So that left it to the smallest entity
village.
out there.
Yeah.
You got all these other entities that have all this money, and you got this one little guy down at the bottom. So we cobbled together and got agreements for about $1.5 million. I think that's what it came out to.
Yeah.
Something like that. And but part of it was the county agreed to take the spoils, and we ended up getting everybody to do something. Brookhaven jumped into it, and Charlie was part of the engineering group that put together this project at the time, and we dredged it out. The mistake we made, Charlie, and I always think about it because, we rectified it this past 2 years when we redid
The jetty.
the jetty because it was starting to fill in again.
Right.
And so you had a choice. Do you dredge it again, or do you fix the problem so you don't have to dredge it again?
Right.
And so what we did is I went to, at the time, Senator Croce, and talked about it. And I said to him that back then, he asked me, what are the things that you got to get done? And for me, that I was getting reports from, the ferry companies and some of the larger guys with bigger boats that at certain tides there were problems. And as I said to Croce, I said, we need to take and rebuild this jetty. So he gives us $650,000 for a jetty and a lighthouse. And I said to him, but we don't own it. The town of Brookhaven owns it. So you got to give the money to the town of Brookhaven. So Coach says to me personally, he said, well, we thought about that, but if we gave it to you, you'd figure out how to get it done, even if you had to give it to the. So I went to the town, made a proposal to the town that they support it. They're going to have to bid it. They're going to have to manage it, fund it, but we'll manage it. And we got it done, and it came out great, didn't it?
Well, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you talk about cobbling together money. You've cobbled together support for projects and build support in that way, and bringing a lot of different stakeholders together to get something done. So that's
And some of the ones you'd never expect to sit in the same room together.
yeah.
To get them to collaborate like that,
Yeah.
that is a feat unto itself.
It really, I'm pretty harmless, just in the sense that I'll drink a beer with anybody, right, Charlie?
I've noticed.
Right.
Well, and again, another water feature within the village is Patchogue Lake.
Yes.
And I know there's been some recent infrastructure improvements that have been done along the southern border to enhance access and the aesthetics. Can you describe those, and what are you guys doing to always be cognizant of the water quality in the lake, and maybe even how to improve the water quality in the lake?
Well, what we're doing right now is, the county came in and they rebuilt the spur, and down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, took what was the center median and put that on the lake itself, so it's a grassed area.
Yep.
We're working with Bill Hillman right now, and they're going for DEC permit for us to be able to clear, the lakefront itself, so you can see. Not that any. He had a permit. The guys that put it in for full restoration, dig out everything, about $250,000 to $500,000 worth of work. And the county doesn't have that funding right now. And I said to him, just get me a permit that allows us to take out the invasive species, or the dead trees, and just clean it up so when you come around you can see it. So That's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And will make a huge difference when we complete the whole thing. The lake itself is problematic because it has a lot of growth in it, you know. And my hope is Canyon Lake, because the county had dredged out Canyon Lake, which feeds this, and that we get a better flow because of the dredging that they did up there and the creation of a greater amount of flow, that some of that flow will clean up some of the things that are in that lake itself.
We were, sorry to interrupt you, but we were the engineers on Canaan Lake.
Oh, really?
And
For the county, yeah.
one of the things we did was we pushed some, because there's some contaminated material there.
Right.
Rather than try to go through the expense of getting rid of it, we worked with the county. The county pushed it into different areas, which were then bulkheaded around.
Oh, really?
So increased, you know,
Oh, so you have a larger...
yeah, you have better access.
Yeah, landward side.
Yeah, and it was also a big invasive species removal project,
Yeah.
too. That was
Yeah.
the basis of it.
Right.
Canaan was so clogged with milfoil and fanwort, those, you know, aquatic plants you see in fish tanks, people couldn't
Yeah.
use it anymore. They couldn't fish, couldn't swim, couldn't kayak.
Yeah.
It was a problem.
You could walk across it.
Pretty much. Yeah. You'd mow, it was like mowing a lawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get there in July or August when that thing was warm, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah. And there used to be a club. I actually used to swim in the
That's right. you
Canaan
told me
Lake.
about
Yeah.
that. Again, this was another project that former legislator Clark, or not former yet, he will be as of January. I think he had put together the...
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob was
Right.
instrumental in the Canaan Lake project,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I think that I'm hoping helps. And we're also supposed to be putting, we have we got a grant to put aerators in that.
Oh,
We're in the
terrific.
process now
Oh, yeah?
of bringing that out, put
Good.
the aerators in. We're hoping that will generate the oxygen and the energy needed to overcome some of the issues that we have.
That's exactly what I was asking about. You know, what are you guys doing to improve the quality within the lake? And that will certainly help.
Yeah.
That'll be a big help, actually.
The funny part, the sad part, we've had them for a couple of years, but we just trying to get somebody to put those in. It's tough finding there's no companies.
Nobody
out
knows how to do it?
Especially now too. There's so much work for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's a relatively small job.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Mayor, to wrap up, you know, I asked you what was your vision for the village when you came into office, right? Well, what's your vision now going forward? What's the future look like for the Village of Patchogue?
Oh, I think we have to stabilize where we're at. You know, I look at the village, and I look at where we were and where we've gotten to. I think you really have to then take a look at yourself and say, how do we maintain what we have over time? You know, you take a communities that, Port Jefferson, for example, they were the primary place people went to, you know, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. They're struggling somewhat now. Not a lot, but they have some issues that they deal with. And I kind of look at that and say, how do I not get in that situation myself? And how do I leave this village in a better place? And part of it is, believe it or not, is reconstructing the village board with people that have the sense to look at the problem, to solve it, not to look at the problem and blame somebody for it. You know, there's two ways to deal with problems. You either in them to fix them, or in them to blame somebody else for them. And it's tougher to fix them, and it's easier to blame somebody. You know, so when I look at the village and I think of where we're at, I think we're in a pretty good place. You know, we have a couple of big projects still coming up. Across the street from the brewery, there's a proposal for an 80 or 90 apartments in that where Tavares Market is. With
Yep.
that, and that whole thing is a car repair place, and there used to be an old Shibe at one time. So they're starting to come in with stuff for that, and that would help energize that into town. We're dealing with the possibility of the Burlington building, which is empty right now, to becoming a medical surgical center. We're dealing with a hospital group that's looking to pick that up and purchase that, and I'm dealing with the property owner who's down in Florida, but very cooperative. So I'm looking at those things that are left right now that we have some control at. And we're looking at that piece of property that's a friend of ours own, Charlie and I. And how do I get something there that's both good on the property but also takes care of the friend that I have? Somebody once said to me when I took this job, you're probably not going to have all the same friends you have today when you get out of here at the other end. I'm trying my hardest to not let that happen.
I think you're doing a good job, doing a great job. My last question, all right, and this is a personal thing. When I go to the Village, I love visiting. I love visiting the shops, the restaurants. You said the art, the entertainment, and parking.
Parking.
Right?
I knew you were going
You
there.
knew- yeah.
I kept waiting.
It seems like there's plenty of parking, but every time I need to find a parking spot, it's few and far between, and oftentimes I have a fairly long walk. Sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's raining, and sometimes I do get lucky and I get a spot right by where I want to go. But what's your feelings on the current parking situation in the Village?
We're approving an IMA to work with the county, I think at this next board meeting, to take the court lot. We've always talked about the possibility of tier parking there.
Yeah.
Tier parking up and gain 100 spaces costs about $7 million. Because you guys in the engineering business.
Yep.
The cost of bricks,
Concrete,
concrete, and so we're dealing with them. But if you look at that lot, it's a tremendous amount of green. Talk about the environment, you save it in some places and you do something else in other places. Is to do a total redesign of the lot. And we can probably pick up another 70 spaces. And I'm also dealing with National Grid right now. They have, across from the YMCA, there's that big vacant area where the steel place is. And there's a fenced-in area, if you look at it. Had been a gas plant back, like the one that was in Bay Shore and Sag Harbor.
Yep.
And they did the cleanup there. So we've been trying to deal with them to get that property for employee parking and to be able to light it, do what we need to do. And if you have 30 restaurants on Main Street, that means you probably have 400 to 500 employees that are parking at 5 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the spaces that you want at 7 o'clock.
They want the customers to come in and enjoy the restaurant. How am I going to get there?
Exactly. And because when we if you park on Main Street and you put $5 in after 6 o'clock, you got the whole night.
Yep.
And there are bartenders park their car there. They put their first $2, and then at 6 o'clock they go and they put the $5 in, and they park on Main Street. And I got to get these people out of those prime spaces. So what I'm looking at is that between rebuilding the lot behind the courthouse and getting another 70 or 80 spaces, 60 spaces out of that, whatever the number is. And if we can cut some deal where we don't get strangled by National Grid and use that piece of property, I can get close to 300 cars off out of the lots.
Wow. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
That'd make an impact.
Just a quick history on two things, and I'll end up. Parking. Back in 1964, 65, Bob Waldauer was the mayor, and he got all the businesses together. All that parking is municipal parking. It's municipal parking because he was able to get all of them to sell their properties to the building line, to the Village, and build up that parking. He was also part of the negotiations. Suffolk County PD came in 1960. The outgoing mayor at that time was George Electric, and Bob Waldauer was coming in, that the 5th precinct would always be in the Village. So by the precinct always being in the Village, the inspectors become like chief of police for the Village of Patchogue. They don't want things to happen in their backyard. So when I look back at the mayors, and I mentioned Norman Electric with the 500,000 gallons, these guys that
Vision.
And some sight, yeah.
And they, and you talk about sewers, and I'll end it out. When I became a trustee, I was sworn in 1986. The first vote I took was on sewers. That next week, the Main Street Press, the little newspaper at the time in the Advance, had articles about myself and the sewer plant. The difference was sewer plant bonded $1.1 million. Paul Pontieri, that was in like 14, 18 print, 20 font. Mine was in like 6.
The byline.
Yeah, the byline, 6 font. Paul Pontieri, appointed trustee. So I've taken second fiddle to sewers my whole life, and I'll take second fiddle to them right now.
Well, it's an important topic to take second fiddle to. It really, especially for the village and Suffolk County and the whole Long Island region. But Mayor, I do want to thank you today for coming in. Charlie, any closing thoughts or comments you want to contribute before we wrap up?
I would just say that I'm familiar with the village since 1957, and I really appreciate having Paul as a friend and what he's done for the village.
I agree. It's been an amazing transformation and revitalization over the last 2 decades. It really has, and I'm glad it's continuing, and I look forward to what the future holds. So with that, we are PWGC, the Environmental Echo. Again, if you guys have comments, questions, suggestions, or just want to reach out to us, the best way to get a hold of us is through our website, which is www.pwgrosser.com/podcast. Again, I am Paul Boyce, President and CEO of PWGC and your host of the Environmental Echo. Again, I thank Mayor Pontieri for taking the time to join Charlie and I today, and I also thank our viewers and listeners for your time to join us and listen in. Again, Environmental Echo, we're signing out. Thank you.